Welcome back, everyone. I'm going to apologize. This is like the fourth time that I've recorded this. It seems that OBS doesn't like some of the Windows 10 UI effects. So, if it sounds like I'm glossing over something or if I forget something, ask me in the comments below. And I'm apologizing ahead of time because, like I said, I've done this a few times by now, and hopefully don't skip over anything important. But anyway, so what we're going to do today is something a little bit different. We're going to build a virtual machine and then install Spigot to it as our Minecraft server. And the reason we're doing this is one of the things that I threw out as an idea and got a little bit of feedback on was that I could use the Byte 4 as a PoE powered Minecraft server, because that's just kind of cool. Now we're doing the record on my ThinkPad P50 and I am using it to actually build the virtual machine, but everything that I'm doing here today can be done on basically any system capable of running Hyper-V, and that generally means anything with like a second gen Core i series chip or the equivalent AMD CPU and newer, as well as Windows 8 Pro or higher. Sadly, Windows 7 didn't get Hyper-V. Obviously, we're using Windows 10. This will still be available in Windows 11. There are other virtual machine systems available to you, such as Proxmox. Unraid's a popular one. I think TrueNAS has a virtual machine system built into it. But we're going to use Hyper-V for a variety of reasons, including, number one, it's just built into Windows. It's there. Most of you have it if you have Windows Pro. Number two, it's the one I use every day at work. This is enterprise level virtualization. Not that some of those other options aren't capable of that. VMware being a good comparison that is enterprise level. However, this is the one I use at work all day, so this is the one I'm going to use to show you guys how easy most of this is, even if the OBS record has been a pain in the butt. The other thing we're going to use is we're going to use Turnkey Core, and that is a version of turnkeylinux that is available for free, and this is basically just Debian 10 with some of the heavy lifting done for me. It's got a nice little text user interface we'll talk about when we get there, and these guys are great. If you need a WordPress server, file server, a LAMP stack, all of these various things, you can go and say, okay, I need a node.js server, and here's the information on how it's been configured. I can download it and it's already set up, and I don't have to do it 20 times. Very often I'm setting up these LAMP stacks because, well, that's just your basic run-of-the-mill web server, so I end up building a lot. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and build a new virtual machine, and I'm just going to name it, I don't know, Pocketcraft 3, because I've done this a few times. We're going to use this as a Gen 1 virtual machine. I had some issues with Gen 2 as far as the secure boot stuff goes. Technically, Debian 10 supports it, but for whatever reason, I had a couple of hiccups there, and I don't want to give myself any more problems than I need. I'm going to give it, I don't know, 8 gigs of RAM, which is not actually an arbitrary number. The system that we're going to be running this on has 16 available. My laptop has 32, so 8 is roughly a quarter of my system resources here, half of them there. Leaves me with room to do other things at the same time. That's one of the big appeals of virtual machines. If I wanted to run, I don't know, 2 different Minecraft servers at the same time, I could quite easily go through the process I'm going to do now, clone my virtual machine so that I don't have to do everything a second time, and then load one set of mods onto one server, a second set of mods onto the other, and then off I go. If I wanted to use a load balancing solution, something like Bungee Cord, and set up a bunch of different Linux or a bunch of different Minecraft systems, I could set up my one that has all the stuff that I need on it as my template, duplicate it for every server in my cluster, and then just turn the features on, make whatever changes I need, probably rename them, give them new IP addresses, and then turn it back on. So I'm going to connect it to a network. That name's fine. This is not the size of the file that this is going to make. This is the size of the file, or the size that the file can expand up to. In my experience, 127 gigs is fine for 90% of the systems that I use anyway. Minecraft specifically, I think the biggest one that I've got is like 30 gigs or so. The only key to remember here is that you don't want that to be bigger than the volume that the VM's going to live on. So if you're going to put this on, we'll say, its own dedicated 128 gig SSD, that size should probably be a little smaller than the maximum capacity of that SSD, because there are some configuration files, and you'll want room for things like snapshots, which we'll talk about later, and Microsoft calls checkpoints. So if I say checkpoints or snapshots, I'm talking about the same thing. And I'm going to install my OS from an ISO. As you can see, I literally have that LAMP one downloaded. I've used that a couple of times in the past few weeks. And finish. All right. So we're going to start it. Connect to it. And I'm going to check that OBS is still recording, because that bit me a couple of times. There we go. And we're basically going to follow the defaults. I want the entire disk. I like having an LVM. 90% is fine. That allows some of it for, I think it uses part of it as swap space. Go ahead and write the changes. Not that you should be using swap space if you can help it. Go ahead and install Grub into the MBR. Check the live media, which I really have to do, but we'll do it anyway. Okay, reboot. Congratulations. In, I don't know, about a minute, we've installed Linux. I think it actually takes longer to boot than it did to install. Enter new password for the root account. This is dealer's choice. This is one of the features that's available with the turnkey Linux systems. This is a backup data or DNS management stuff. We're not going to use any of that. You can, if you've got 40 or 50 VMs, it might be worth looking into the backup and migration stuff, but we're not going to worry about any of that. Emails, we're just going to send to my Pocketables email. And install the security updates. Alright, and then because Linux never asks to reboot, it's asking to reboot. Alright, and at this point, I'm actually going to stop interacting directly with the VM. Technically, I could do everything that I'm going to do here. However, copy and paste into the VM kind of sucks. So we're going to SSH into it using a PowerShell window here. And we're just going to do SSH root at the IP that it gave. So this is neat. I found what was breaking OBS. And what broke OBS, and I'm kicking myself for not noticing it, was actually SSH. So when I SSH into the Minecraft server, OBS stops recording. And I don't know if that's a security setting or something. But as I was saying before I got interrupted, and we're just going to scroll through most of this because we're not going to redo it again. One of the things that we have to do now is, it used to be you could just run this line here and say apt-get install git and then open JDK8 and you'd be good to go. Well, now Minecraft needs Java 16, so we have to follow these instructions, and specifically Spigot recommends the Azul Zulu build of OpenJDK. And you basically just follow their step-by-step instructions. You can see here, where'd I go? apt-get q update, apt-get, yq install, newpg curl. We just follow through all of that up until instruction 2 here, which says apt-get install Zulu 11-JDK. Well, you need to update that to say version 16. I did here because I almost was on autopilot and installed 11, but we need to install 16 and then let it do its thing. And at that point, we can run the Java version command and we'll see that we have OpenJDK 16. And for anyone watching, I would love to know why connecting to an SSH session stopped OBS from recording what I was doing. Moving on. From that point forward, we can just follow the build tools instructions for Linux. I am actually going to clear, and then I'm going to make a directory. I think it was in root. Yeah, we're going to make a directory, and we're going to call it Minecraft, just for my sanity, so I know where files are. And we're going to download build tools. So you've got to download the jar from this address, and curl -o build tools jar. And this is why I SSH'd in. I don't want to type all of that in to the VM. And from that point, we have it. We need to run our git config command. And then it's really simple. It's just java-jar build tools. And it will go and pull everything else that it needs and build. And the one thing I want to point out while this is doing that is that Linux is case sensitive. If I had typed this in as lowercase build tools.jar, it would not have worked. Well, that's embarrassing. I'm fairly certain that Alright, so I've been sitting here waiting for it to finish because I had scrolled up too far. It only took about 2 minutes. And now I feel dumb. Alright, moving forward from that, we can go ahead and make a shell script to start it with, so we don't have to type in our command line flags all the time. So we're going to use nano, and we're just going to name it start.sh. And I'm actually just going to copy this whole section. Now, it's important that this is, I mentioned earlier, case sensitive. And We're going to edit these two to be 2 and 6. And what these define is the minimum amount of memory that it has to start with, which just kind of saves you a little time waiting for it to allocate memory, and then the maximum amount of memory that it's allowed to use. And then our jar file is named spigot-1.17.1.jar. And I like having the GUI or the text user interface for whatever that's worth. And we're going to start it, and it's going to fail the first time. Oh, actually, we need to make the script executable first. So it's going to start to launch and then stop because we need to accept the license agreement. It's also going to generate some of the other files that it needs. So we'll start with the license agreement. And this is the other key file that it made. This is the server properties file that dictates some of the characteristics of the server. We can change our message of the day. And our world name to be, I don't know. No, I made changes I didn't want to keep. Okay. Don't want to edit the world name. And you can turn things like PvP on and off and set the difficulty. You can set a player limit here. Allow people to fly, set up a resource pack, whether the nether is on, the port that the server talks to, and all those other things here. And there's a connection password option. And we're just going to go ahead and save that. And we're going to go ahead and start it again. This time around, it'll launch. Alright, and that took a little longer than I would have liked, and part of that is because I forgot to give the system a couple more virtual CPU cores. By default, Hyper-V only gives a VM 1 core. For something like this, I'm probably going to give it 3. Which I know is an odd number, but that'll mean that it's plenty responsive when it's running on the byte 4. And since we built a Minecraft server, let's test our Minecraft server and connect to it. And if we recall, our IP address is 10.10.2.11. And we're just going to do a direct connect. And we're... Oh no. Oh, there we go. We're a little on the pokey side because the Minecraft server is only running on 1 CPU core. Like I said, I'm going to bump that up to probably 3 cores. This looks perfect. I am going to add a couple of... Is that a beehive? That is a beehive. Mods to this. I'm going to add MCMMO. I'm going to add a anti-griefing mod, and I'm going to add a couple of other things to the server. I'm going to set up Zabbix so I can monitor it. I'm going to set up some auto checkpoints so that if something does go wrong, we can recover from it. And that's all of that. 103 frames per second. Neat. Here comes a bee. Anyway, this is the world that I'm going to export and then stand up on the byte 4, and this will be available publicly at a URL that I'll put on the screen here when I edit the video by the time this video goes live. And yeah, that's basically it. If you've got any questions, comments, wondering why I did something one way versus another, go ahead and leave it in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to answer any of that. And then closing out, I'd like to thank anyone who helps support Pocketables, either be via Amazon affiliate or Patreon. It is support like that that helps make videos like this possible. I would like to thank Electrix for providing our opening and closing themes. And finally, thank you for watching.